Welcome to Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines presentation. My name is Hannah Offit, a local artist in Peoria, Illinois, as well as a longtime healthcare worker and environmental activist. I am also a concerned citizen. This pipeline leaves a lot of concerns and questions. I think that it's important for us to hear the experiences of Cassie, Debra'e, and Jerry, the residents of Satartia, Mississippi, who were there when the CO2 carbon dioxide pipeline exploded, and how it dramatically affected their lives. I think it's important to educate ourselves on what this could mean for the people of South Peoria and the rest of Central Illinois. People over profit any day and any time. If you have questions, volunteers will take your note cards and we will present your questions to the speakers. Thank you for coming.
Hello, my name is Debra'e Coaster, and I'm a resident of the Southside of Peoria. And I'm here today wanting to use this session, this conversation, to help other Peoria residents become more familiar with the issue of the proposed carbon dioxide pipeline and how it would affect everyone in this city. There are approximately 14,010 people who live on the south side of Peoria. And right this moment, I would guesstimate maybe 10% of those people even know a pipeline is being considered. Now is the time for us to find out more information about carbon dioxide pipelines, what the repercussions are for our city even considering such an endeavor. I had the privilege of going to Iowa for a meeting of basically federal lawmakers, lawmaking bodies that govern safety regulations, farmers, people who concerned citizens. The proposed pipeline route would run from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, through the Quad Cities, on through Peoria, and end in Decatur, Illinois. It would stretch approximately 280 miles. The reason why there has become a need for a pipeline, some say, is because when you process grain products, corn and such, carbon dioxide is released because of that process. But that's in Iowa, so they've come up with the grand idea to send the waste product to our state and to lay the pipeline in such a fashion that it would run along the south end of Peoria and extend to Bartonville. My home is less than 1 mile from the proposed pipeline route. That's why I'm here today. I'm standing for myself, my neighbors, my community, and I'm saying no. I cannot think of one good idea to entertain a pipeline, especially running it the route they are considering. We are the most underfunded part of this city. We are right now a food desert with not a grocery store within at least 3 to 5 miles of my home. We have many things that we're fighting, whether it's crime, poverty, unemployment, and now we're faced with the issue of a proposed pipeline. We wanted to bring the people who have experienced an explosion on a similar pipeline to you so you can hear their voices and you have this wonderful opportunity to be able to give them your questions and get answers. Please do your due diligence as residents. Google about the pipelines, about the nature of carbon dioxide. And I appreciate everyone being here today.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Tracy Fox. I'm with Central Illinois Healthy Community Alliance and Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines. I don't want to take up much time, but I want to just give everyone the basics on what's happening here. In 2002, Archer Daniels Midland signed an agreement with Wolf Carbon Solutions, a company out of Canada. I don't think, oh, that is right, it looks different from the Spanish one, sorry. Signed an agreement with Wolf Carbon Solutions out of Canada to build a pipeline. That would transport CO2, as Dari said. This is concerning because these pipelines are part of a project to move CO2 waste to be contained underground in Decatur, Illinois, deep underneath the Mahomet Aquifer and drinking water for 800,000 people in eastern Illinois. It's happening because of a round of lucrative tax credits that were included in President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Companies can earn $85 a ton if they provide carbon dioxide for sequestration. So Canadian company like Wolf sees the opportunity, they move in, and they start trying to find people to make deals with. They know how to build pipelines, they say. They've been doing it up in Canada for years. So they see this money and they come down. And Illinois, unfortunately, is in the bullseye for all of this because the geology underlying Illinois includes the Mount Simon Stan sandstone. And the Illinois Geologic Survey has identified this as a prime place to store CO2 and other gases. So it's created this kind of rush to get things done. And it's concerning because CO2 pipelines are really different from the kind of pipelines that we're used to, oil and gas pipelines. They're under much higher pressure than gas pipelines, and they need different types of steel, different types of weld, and more care and siting. When CO2 is pressurized to go into these pipelines, it needs to be very, very pure. It needs to be very, very dry. Water can actually combine with the CO2 to create carbolic acid, which is something that's going to eat away at the inside of the pipeline and cause it to prematurely fail. To take a look at where the pipeline is coming across Illinois, you can see that it's entering north of the Quad Cities in a beautiful little community of Riverside Homes in Port Byron, Illinois, and it'll come down, go near Galesburg in Knox County, come through Stark, and go through Peoria County, slated to cross the Illinois River south of Bartonville, north of Mapleton, and come in on the south side of Pekin. So they'll be close to the Pekin ethanol plant, and they don't mind the fact that 3 different Pekin neighborhoods, as well as Pekin's Rankin School, are on the route. Now, if you'll notice on the route, on the map on the right, you don't see the spur into Peoria. Because they think we were born yesterday, they filed without that spur on the route, but when we had a public forum with them, thanks to Councilwoman Jackson a few weeks ago, they were quite clear that Peoria isn't off the route at all. It's still under consideration. They're just trying to make a deal with Biourgia, which is the old ADM plant at the foot of Edmund Street. It's the plant that burned for a couple of weeks last summer and left all the stench in the air. So we are aware that it's a divide and conquer technique, but we understand that we need to continue to fight this pipeline at all levels. We're going to be talking a lot about pipeline ruptures today. I just want to give you a little preview of these pipelines. They're out in rural areas. They could be in town, but they're going to involve a huge trench. They're going to involve setbacks on either side. for construction where the ground will be completely dug up. And I guess if water mains, railroad tracks, etc. get in their way, they'll just have to be moved, because one of the things that Wolf is fighting for is the ability to force anyone who doesn't go along with their pipeline plans to participate because of a power called eminent domain. So if they can't get a voluntary easement with landowners, they will be fighting to have a court order to take land in order to do this project. The impacts beyond what's going to happen with health and safety, which our guests from Satartia are far more able to paint a picture of than I am, are many and varied. There are going to be agricultural impacts, and we've been talking to farmers up and down the route who are concerned about soil degradation, crop loss, and impacts to their tiling systems. We've been talking to schools and churches who are on the route that don't know how they can continue to hold services or offer classes with a pipeline bringing such danger to their property. We've talked to residents in neighborhoods who are concerned about a wholesale buyout. We've talked to people who have built beautiful estates and are concerned about the loss of property value. There are also a number of businesses on the route, businesses that employ dozens and dozens of people. And they don't know what the implications are for the machine shops down near where the route's going to come in on Pekin, or for some of the other manufacturing facilities that are on the route down in Macon County near Decatur. Local governments also need to grapple with this. I told you earlier that these folks are going to get $85 a ton for the carbon sequestration project. Well, when they rolled into Springfield to talk about what they were going to provide for cities to beef up their EMS, to do long-term maintenance of these routes, what they were going to provide to rural fire departments and everyone, the total sum of money they were willing to devote to that was 15 cents a ton. So they aren't really too concerned about how we're going to cope with any of this. And you're going to hear what happens to vehicles, the types of equipment that are needed. These are burdens that we as taxpayers should not have to bear. All right, come on. Okay, so who's in charge of this? The federal pipeline, or the Federal Department of Transportation has this Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration that Doris talked about. They are late to the game, but somewhat aware now of the Satartia situation and have been looking at what to do. And they say the situation is complex enough that they aren't even going to be able to make recommendations about how to keep these pipelines safe until June 2024. And once the recommendations are released, there will be another period of time until they would actually take effect. So is it any wonder that both Navigator and Wolf Carbon Solutions are knocking on the ICC door and trying to get their pipelines sited while they will be under the older, weaker regulations? And then there's the issue of enforcement, but we'll be hearing more about that as well. Who decides for Illinois? Well, it's the Illinois Commerce Commission down in Springfield. It's a 5-panel governor-appointed board that makes decisions on everything from railroad lines to pipelines and utility rates. So they have a lot of work in front of them, and Wolf has come and is asking to build this pipeline despite its callous and cruel routing through all kinds of small communities, churches, farms, etc. They're asking to take land by eminent domain if they need to, and they're asking to proceed without a single Illinois customer. No business in Illinois is asking for this service or has signed a deal on it, and they have not identified where exactly they're even going to be pumping this waste underground. To me, that's highly problematic. In fact, it's predatory. And that is exactly what we've seen at every step of this process. How do we influence the ICC decision? First and foremost, we lawyer up because it's a technical venue. We need legal representation. We need expert witnesses, and that's where we need to win at the end of the day. We can bolster our ability to win by having a lot of public outcry about this, filing ICC comments, writing letters to the editor, just generally educating the public. We can also influence this decision by getting our local units of government, including city councils, county boards, even township governments, school districts, park districts, and I want to give a shout out to Peoria Park District, which was the first governmental unit to come out in opposition of the wolf line. They know that pipelines don't mix with their parks on the south side of Peoria. But all of that work basically feeds into influencing this ICC decision. So, good. I'm really not much of a fundraiser. Anyway, so the big ask is that you become members of Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines. We've got forms at the back. If you don't feel like you want to become a member yet, consider throwing some cash in the donation jar, or you can text Stop Wolf to 801-801 and make an online donation. We hope that you'll join us because we know that we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, and we don't have the connections that these big pipelines do. But we have a lot more good-hearted people, and together I think we can turn this around. So thanks so much.
Excuse me, yes, my name is Deemmeris Burns. I am a survivor from the Satartia explosion in 2022. And just to give you a brief summary of what happened, which is pretty much all I can do. We were traveling home from a fishing trip, didn't think nothing of it. And as we were going down number 3, this pipeline ruptured and blew up. It came up in a big, just like a mushroom cloud. And I had 17 seconds to call my mom and tell her we were on our way to come pick her up because the pipeline had blew up. And by the time we turned on our road, our car just shut off. It went dead. After the car shut off, we went out. I woke up at the hospital about 3 hours later. And that happened at 7. I woke up at the hospital at about 11 o'clock. I don't actually know exactly the time I was found. Well, I'll find it out later. My symptoms after the fact, I suffer from anxiety, short-term memory loss. I have trouble focusing now. Just a whole lot of little nicks and necks that has actually changed my life. I don't sleep. Anxiety is a big part of that. Insomnia, a lot of people can say that's a joke, but it's not. I might sleep 2-3 hours at night and I'm up for the rest of the day. And I had to move away from that spot because I just being afraid. And I don't want y'all to be afraid because we didn't know what was gonna happen. But you guys do. So I encourage every last one of y'all can vote against it, do it. If they ain't got a simpler way of doing it, I'd advise you not to do it. So thank y'all, and I will answer any questions that you all have.
My name is Cassandra Burns. I'm Deemmeris' wife. And I play a part in this because I have to deal with the aftermath of what happened to them. They don't know the true story of what happens when the CO2 you is implanted with the CO2. He's not the man that I once met. I mean, he could go outside and do a little work, but now he can't go out there and do too much of nothing. He doesn't sleep like he says. He can't sleep. If he sleeps, it's under 4 hours. He's up sweating, jumping up out of his sleep, having anxiety attacks, and he has asthma. But his asthma after that got worse. He was on oxygen for almost 6 months after that when they found out they had CO2 in their blood. It took almost a month after before a doctor finally tested them. Had to do arterial gases. Nobody ever thought to do arterial gases. By me being in the medical field, I had to question, like, did y'all do arterial gases? And finally, that's when we found out why he was getting sick on his stomach, why he couldn't hardly breathe, and put him on oxygen for months. And I don't know the outcome of this. I mean, I truly don't. 5-10 years from now, I don't know if he may live. We don't have medical insurance because he can't work. I'm the only person to provide it in our house. We can't get insurance to try to even cover if he needed to go to the doctor. And they're telling you that it's no side effects of this stuff. It is. I mean, he's a living witness. Thank God that this man went down that road and saved him, because if it wasn't for him, he wouldn't be here. And I thank God for Mr. Briggs. I truly do. But the side effects of this stuff, I'm telling you, I wouldn't wish it on nobody. I don't know, half the time I have to go to work and constantly call back home to make sure he's not in the yard to pass that. I don't know what may happen. He leaves stuff on the stove, he forget that if he do something, he can't stay focused on nothing he does. I'm constantly reminding him, he said I'm a nagging wife. I'm not nagging, I'm trying to make sure you're good. Because you don't know what has happened to you. You're not understanding. Because they haven't done research on it to even know what the outcome of this is. So if you all can vote against it, vote against it. I mean, because if it ruptures, you all are not equipped to do nothing. I mean, you may save a few lives and this or that, but if you ever count it, that's a long-term effect. That ain't no 6 months, 1 year. This is something that's going to be a lifetime if you live through it.
Right.
So that's my story on my experience with my husband, Debrae, as a survivor, Satartia.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Briggs. I'm the Warren County Fire EMS 911 Chief, which is an adjacent county to Yazoo County. I was requested to respond to their county probably 45 minutes after the rupture to assist, mostly because their resources couldn't get to where they needed to go due to the leak. Their equipment wouldn't run in the plume or in the area that was affected. Fire trucks were dead, couldn't go anywhere, so we had to come from our side of the county to get there. And even our equipment wouldn't run once we got closer to the event. We searched by foot the town of 50 or 60, and the best way I can describe it is kind of like a ghost town or something you'd see on TV. It was like the world just stopped and everybody was gone. You know, headlights still on, cars sitting in the middle of the highway. People's homes were left open, barbecue grills, somewhat smoldering at that point. But it was like just everybody vanished. And we searched by foot, searched all 50 or 60 houses. And we at that time still didn't know what the leak was. So we were in complete gear that firemen wear, you know, from head to toe, air pack, breathing air. We had to do hot changes because we didn't know what the outside air was. And we were actually about to head back. And the reason we were searching what we were searching was his emergency management director got with the weather service and did what's known as plume modeling to find out where this gas was going. So we searched the high-risk area first. And on our way out, we asked if there was anything else. And they said, well, there is this one road that's really close to the leak. So they gave us directions to get there. And you couldn't hear very well. You had to use your headsets inside of your air packs to be able to hear because of the roar of the leak. Even a mile or 2 miles away, you couldn't communicate. They had radioed me at one point and said the leak was stopped. And I actually remember my very good comment. I said, well, somebody needs to tell the leak that. Because it ran on for 2 more hours after they shut the valves off. Still releasing product. But we went down the road and we were probably less than a quarter mile from the leak, and we found Debrae and his brother and cousin in a car, which I originally said that they were deceased. They were that lifeless, just not breathing. I would say one breath every 5 seconds, 6 seconds, or 6 times a minute. And they were foaming at the mouth. The car was in drive, the headlights were on, the car wasn't running. And foot was still on the brake, and one of them had a drink in their hand resting on their knee. It was still there. And it's just like they got froze in place. So at that point, we busted all the glass out, started dragging them out, getting them to safety. And only 2 hours later, I was actually at the leak site, found a pipeline representative there, and made the comment. I said, I'm sure glad this don't run through my county. And he asked me which county. He said, we run straight through the middle of that. In 25 years in the fire world, I never knew about that pipeline. So at least, if there's anything good, y'all are here now. But my question to y'all, if this comes through, who's going to tell your kids? Who's going to tell the next group of firemen? Who's going to tell the people that buy your property, that lease your property, that rent your property? That's not going to be in the selling disclosure. By the way, there's a pipeline over here that you need to be aware of. That's not going to happen. You wouldn't buy the house, right? And there are hazards that we deal with. We face hazards driving here today. You get on the highways, the river, the rail. You know, we know there's hazards, but they're not in your backyard. You're supposed to feel safe when you go home and go to bed, and that's not the case with a pipeline outside. We make the conscious choice to drive up and down the road or whatever. If we wanted to stay home and be safe, we could stay home. I have a railroad that borders my property. It's there 50 years ago, 60 years ago, probably longer than that. I made the choice to buy that property, that there's a railroad there. So y'all have a choice now to get this routed somewhere else or away from population. And it's kind of a two-edged sword. You know, if you push this thing out in a very rural area, farmland, that kind of thing, where your resources are very thin out there too. And then if you bring it into the city where you have resources, then your population is way up. So, you know, there really is no right answer for this. And I've said all along that, you know, I've got two hats here. On one hand is public safety, and we're out there to do whatever to save whatever. And then on the other side of it, it's a dad, it's a husband, it's a landowner, and I'll be damned if it comes through my property. Plain and simple. So, you know, fight as much as you can, and if it does come through, work as hard as you can to make sure there's alert systems, mass notification. If there is a leak, there's going to be a leak, or whatever happens, with instructions on for whatever you do. You know, and then you have other places that they don't have that capability. You know, you may have a homeless community. I know back home we have several homeless tent shelters in the woods. That's 200 or 300 people just out in the woods. You know, who's going out there to check on them? The answer is nobody.
So now's, that's not working, is it?
Yes, it is.
Is it? Oh, okay. Now's the time for questions, because we can come by and pick up your questions, and I'll start with this one. Is the coalition to stop CO2 pipelines connected to you, Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines? My statement from the person: no emergency measures or prevention measures will comfort or convince me that the CO2 pipeline is anything like a good idea. I'm not interested in hearing about these measures because, to start with, I don't want any emergency. So the question was, is the coalition connected? Tracy?
Yeah, the Coalition to Stop CO2 Pipelines is a great organization, and they have been spearheading work at the state level to get the word out about pipelines. So we use a lot of their materials, we distribute their signs, and we are in fact members of that organization. We've also been using our local group, Central Illinois Healthy Community Alliance, to run educational programs in Peoria. We are keeping our Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines very separate from that effort because we want all of the funds raised for that to go directly to legal intervention. So if Citizens Against Predatory Pipeline gets a check from you, it'll either go to pay a lawyer or go to pay an expert witness in front of the Illinois Commerce Commission. We believe that's the surest way to stop this pipeline. is to have our own voice in the proceeding and present the strongest possible case, including the experience of Satartia as part of the evidence of why this shouldn't happen.
That was my question.
Excuse me, yeah,
Repeat what you
we
said.
have another guest who you see on the screen. I wasn't aware that he was with us by Zoom. So we are going to let Dan Ziegert, who is a journalist who has written extensively on this subject. Welcome, Dan. We can't hear you.
I think it's on our side, I'm not sure what this is running into.
Unmute.
We have a little technical difficulty. We can't hear you yet. It may be on our end, Dan. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Dan.
Hold on to this for 1 second, Dan. Okay. Do we know?
Judas.
Eu escrevi isso aqui.
Yeah.
Não. Eles têm a roda.
Once in my life, I don't think this is something I screwed up.
Yeah.
This is something that probably inherent referring to this kind of situation, the live room.
This chap knife was all up to it.
Yeah, that's what we're trying here.
Take time.
Speak again, Dan.
We're trying to get you connected.
Trent, that's fine. I mean, will I be able to share my screen, the setting that I'm in now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm mostly going to talk. I apologize for my voice. I just came out of 3 weeks in the hospital. And
I don't think we can't, you can only hear about 4 rows back.
Take questions.
go
ahead and take questions. You should go ahead.
Take questions in the meantime, please.
All righty, we will do that. Okay. I think this is for Jerry. You said Satartia was a ghost town. Where was everyone? Had they fled? If so, how did they know about the rupture?
We lost our microphone, so I'll just talk. It's fine. So when I arrived at the first checkpoint from our county, there was a couple ambulances already there, and there were people coming out by personal vehicles. People were dragging them out, dragging them in the beds of trucks. On the side of the road, there was people on their hands and knees vomiting. So I don't know how many escaped my way. And then there was also a way to the north that they could leave through another checkpoint as well. We just weren't allowing people in. But there was the town is right next to a major highway. Debra'e referred to number 3, that's just 3 highway. And people were stopping and grabbing people off the side of the road and taking them to shelter.
Another question here relates to how long afterwards did your equipment start working?
So we never took our equipment in the direct plume. It's just the closer we got, the more it started spitting and sputtering, the lack of oxygen. So I guess my answer would be when I got back to the command post, it ran fine. I originally thought somebody needed to do a PM on my equipment because it wasn't running right. Somebody fell down on their job back at home. And then when I got to fresh air, it started running right. And then finally we figured out it was started for oxygen.
And maybe you could explain why they shut down.
Just a internal combustion engine needs fuel, it needs fire, and it needs oxygen. If you take away one of those things, it doesn't want to run anymore.
And this is more of a technical question too. Will the pressure increase when it comes down over the hill by our house? Our water pressure went so high we had to put in a regulator. Does anybody have
Is that referring to pressure
in the pipeline? Yeah, I believe.
I don't think I'm not a pipeline guy, I don't think that would change.
It's a constant.
And this one, who has responsibility for lives lost?
Partial.
I'm sorry.
To the last question.
Yes,
About
the pressure.
pressure. Carbon dioxide is usually in the form of air. So to transport it all of these miles, it would need to be liquefied. When you liquefy carbon dioxide, that's when it becomes, my word is unstable, but it's more combustible. And to move it, it has to be at high levels of pressure, very high levels of pressure. And so, the nature of the actual carbon dioxide is much of the issue. I hope that helps with that.
Another question, who has responsibility for lives lost and medical bills when these accidents occur?
I have a question. I'd like-
Go ahead.
Not at the
What?
moment, not at the moment, Dan, sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna get off. Bye-bye.
Should get that one, you should come through.
And then what was the
Who
question?
has responsibility for lives lost and medical bills when these accidents occur?
So I don't know if
You do. There's no one else. I lost my job. I lost all my medical benefits. I had to go to the doctor for a year, which I had, what you call it on the job, yeah, my disability. And I had up to a year that I was off work, that I kept my disability. And now that's failed. So now it's up to me to fight these guys to get what I think I'm deserved. And a life is not worth anything. I mean, my life is worth more than they could ever give me. You know, and like as far as that question goes, it's up to you.
Thank you.
Whoops.
For landowners, what is our liability risk? Will we be able to get insurance? What kinds of dollars will be available to our counties to ready them for the possibility of a disaster?
Well, I'm not a landowner, but let's say something happened on your land and it blows up. They're not equipped to give you anything because you already paid. They already paid you to run a pipeline through your stuff. So it's on you.
Tracy, you want to speak to the issue of insurance?
Yeah, for folks who are familiar, the Coalition to Stop CO2 Pipelines has a resources section on its website, which is printed on most of our literature in the back. If you look there, there's a letter from a State Farm agent that one of the landowners on the Navigator line sent. And State Farm basically said, you're on your own. You should work it out when you sign the agreement with the company. So not a lot of help for you that way. Similarly, I mean, these guys are pressing hard in Springfield to try to get out of any sort of liability. They would prefer that the state carry all the liability and you can rely on the great state of Illinois to make you whole if something happens. Like I said, they're getting $85 a ton. They rolled in with an offer of 15 cents a ton to help fund all the counties along the route to train all the first responders, police, fire, dispatchers, and emergency room personnel, and equip everybody with EVs on that 15 cents a ton. I mean, they have no intention of doing anything for anybody, even like on the Navigator line. County level negotiations are running about $150,000. That's the total amount that they're thinking of giving Adams County for running the pipeline through there. There's no way it could even begin to cover the cost of giving everybody a 4-hour training session, it's just.
And that's, the third question was what kind of dollars will be available to our counties to ready them for the possibility of a disaster? And it's
all one pot. I mean, they want long-term care, preparatory, emergency response. They want it all funded out of one very small bucket for every county in the state that's impacted by this stuff. And probably they'll try to negotiate in any disruptions to drinking water where that stuff is stored, that can come out of that bucket too. It's only 850,000 people.
May I add this?
You need the microphone.
I want to bring attention to the route again in this way, where Peoria is the closest, Peoria is the largest city on this route. And our firefighters, our policemen, our EMTs are beholden to other surrounding counties to respond to any blast along other counties on this pipeline. So if something happens in Knox County, Peoria will be pulled on to go respond. If something catastrophic were to happen where it involved both counties, you see how we're stretched? You see how the resources are already so limited? What happened last time there was a significant blast in Peoria? We were scrambling for that. I want to draw you guys' attention to the map to your left on the wall there. That red ribbon represents the proposed pipeline that would start around UFS and run all the way south to Bartonville. So guess what? Both of our large area hospitals are pretty much considered to be on the pipeline route. Where are they going to take people if something goes wrong? And I want to be the repeater of the phrase, if something goes wrong. We need to look at the entire picture, everyone. We all have different vantage points to looking at this one issue. We have executives looking at billions of dollars to be made. I'm looking at neighbors and community people. We're looking at how would we survive and how would we move on from this? Just considering the pipeline and what has already happened, do you really believe, I'm asking you the room this question, do you believe if they build a pipeline it will never blow? From what you know of carbon dioxide, from what you know of geological movement beneath our feet, I hate to say it, a little bit of human error there, or anything quirky, is there a chance that we could look at something catastrophic happening to this community, and do we have the resources in place to properly respond? Do we have enough firefighters with trucks who would be able to come to the south side and help hundreds or thousands of people? That's what places me here in this discussion today.
So will communities or governments receive or be given any funds for allowing the pipelines in, and has Peoria or Pekin been offered money? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we know the answer to that.
I know that BioAsia has offered, they've offered community members amounts of $5,000. And when I was approached, honestly, I felt it was hush-up money. Because if I take your $5,000, however discreetly, and then I sit in a meeting like this and speak against what you're doing, you're gonna come for me. You're gonna let everybody, well, Doreen, she took the check. So that's why I consider that type of offer. They told me that they care about Peoria and the South Side.
Say that with a laugh.
And does it make common sense to build up a community and then put landmines underneath?
This may be more for Jerry. What was the age and condition of the failed Mississippi pipeline? And are the pipelines properly inspected, tested, maintained?
I'm not sure the age. I want to say I heard in all of this that pipeline was constructed in 2012, but I'm not 100% sure on that. As far as monetary, it costs that company $5 to get a permit from my county. I don't know what else they put into it, but $5 was the start, I guess, is what they paid for it. And shortly, was it 2 weeks after the rupture?
No, a week.
We had another rupture on the same line.
No, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They had it back running though.
Yeah, had another rupture in 2 weeks. So I don't know the condition, and, you know, everybody's talking about jobs and pipe fitters and all that, and they're, you know, they're good. But when the earth leaves the pipe, it doesn't matter who welded it, you know, you're gonna have a failure there.
This is for Debra'e. Have you experienced any pushback from the pipeline company for speaking out about your story?
No. No, I haven't heard anything yet. But I do have people talking for me. And if I do get some pushback, I'll push back on them.
Let us know.
Do you all know what, where this carbon dioxide was coming from? That it was collecting and where it was going? And
So locally for us, they use the carbon dioxide for extracting oil from the ground. So that's where it was coming from. And where it was going, I think they're burying it somewhere around Delhi, Louisiana, which is outside of Monroe, Louisiana. To my knowledge, that's where it goes.
And after the explosion, how big of an area was affected by the Satartia rupture? If you were looking at square miles or, I don't
We
well, whatever.
found patients, and obviously the further away you got from the explosion, the less the symptoms were. Obviously they weren't what Debrae encountered. But close to 5 miles away, about a mile wide, just with the geography and the wind direction that night, we had some about 5 miles away. They were elderly, low income, living in mobile homes. They were having difficulty breathing, that kind of thing. So we ended up, other than the 3 of them, I think we got 15 more people out that were having some type of symptomatic exposure.
And a question about how did the gas get to dissipate? I mean, how does that happen and how long? You sort of addressed it a little bit, but.
So in that plume model, and I think y'all will probably hear more and more about plume modeling from the gas companies and that kind of thing, but from our experience, after it spread into our delta and the leak stopped, I think it's just slowly dissipating in the atmosphere.
And
Well, they did air monitoring, the company did air monitoring for what, a week in that area? Yeah, the company had the pipeline there, it's,
So they did.
after the fact.
right. Yeah, and I met them after the fact, and they gave me some gas monitors. The guy I met the night of the rupture. Once he told me that I have it in my county, I was like, well, we need to talk. And he said, absolutely. I met him about 6 months ago. And that was in 2020. I said, we need to talk. So, but they got us gas monitors. Well, rephrase that. They said they have us gas monitors. I haven't physically seen them yet. But, you know, I don't need the gas monitor. You need a gas monitor, not me. I'm gonna be wearing my own. I'm not gonna trust yours. So, but we have his emergency management director kind of the same boat as me. You know, we met all these people and everybody got real interested in talking about it now. And his quote that I like, he said, that's like putting on a condom the next day. It's not effective. I mean, that's what it is. What it is. Now we know. And you know, to be honest with you, y'all wouldn't know anything about this if it hadn't happened to him. This pipeline would be ran under y'all, and y'all wouldn't know anything.
A question about our residents in the Quad Cities working towards stopping the pipelines. Tracy?
Yeah, we've been up to Port Byron, which is the little town north of the Quad Cities, where the pipeline is slated to come across from Iowa, and we had a house full. Lots of opposition starting there, coming down into Henry County. Folks in Geneseo are getting organized. Folks in Pekin are getting organized. We've got visitors from as far afield as Rock Island County in the back. I see Logan County in the room. I see Tazewell County in the room. So yeah, this is not just Peoria. This is all along the pipeline route. We need to do some work in Decatur. We need to do some work down in DeWitt County. But Joyce Blumenshine in the back of the room is working on that for us. So we're thankful for her and everyone who's lending a hand, because this is a big lift. There's plenty of work. If any of you want to get involved, we welcome you.
So here's another Jerry question. So if people can potentially pass out in a short period of time, maybe 8 to 10 seconds, and the pipeline shuts off in 20 minutes, if a break is detected, how far could the poisonous gas potentially travel? And if that happened here in Peoria, in the area that we were in the south side, how many prepared emergency staff would be needed in a 5-block area of an urban area? Do you have any kind of estimate of how many?
There are 25 calls. What blocks?
You want me to do math? So part of that question was, you said the leak was detected and shut off in 20 minutes. Is that part of that question?
Yes.
Just sort of
Our
trying to
leak-
get a
our
sense
leak was
of, we talk
detected.
about needing emergency response, but what is that really, when you start saying, well, how many ambulances, how many emergency responders do you need if there's a rupture in an urban area?
All of them.
If there's 30,
Oh, no.
100, 1,000?
We have several in my county, there's several in his county, and they were making back and forth trips on just a few that we had. It was overwhelming, because keep in mind, the world doesn't stop just because you have a gas leak. There's still cardiac arrest, there's still everything else going on. But that 20-minute thing, our leak lasted over 3 hours, and they cut it off in 20 minutes, you're correct. But it was still leaking 3 hours into it as well. So that thinking it's just gonna blow up and go down and it's all done, that's not true. Depends on valve placements and size of the pipe and pressure in the pipe, there's a lot to go with that.
So what you're saying is it's sort of hard to predict.
It's unpredictable.
It's hard to predict, but knowing the distance of your pipe and the valves that how far apart they are and the pressure. You know, if it's like ours, I think we're 10 miles apart, the valves. And this pipeline that they're proposing, I don't know if it's y'all's or a different one, 20 mile distance between valves. How long do you think that's gonna leak?
Yeah, that's in the rural areas, and in the cities, it's, Tracy, is it the 7.5 miles, something like that? I mean, when you think of 7.5 miles, how far across is it, you know, in terms of the city even, when you're doing the crow flies kind of thing?
Well, it only takes 4 minutes for your brain to be deprived of oxygen for you to start to have brain cancer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Thank you.
there you go.
Well, actually, 10 minutes is clinical death.
Wow.
Okay.
If I could say something,
No, we're just doing the questions first. Yeah, thank you. What alternatives do we have to eliminate the CO2 gas somewhere else? Can we chemically turn it into something safe? Tracy, you want to take that one?
There are a lot of crazy processes that are proposed to deal with CO2 off of ethanol plants. I can't vouch for the safety of any of them, but what I will say, 2 things. One, there is no legal requirement right now that ethanol plants do anything about their CO2. It's not that they're out of compliance and they must find a solution. Wolf has come to town with a solution because it's profitable for them to get $85 a ton. Secondly, I will say that ethanol is not our biggest problem. If you're concerned about climate change, you'll be familiar with the pie chart that shows where CO2 comes from. The agriculture industry is not a giant piece of the pie, and ethanol is not a giant piece of the agriculture slice. When this was sold to Congress and when it went into the Inflation Reduction Act, it was touted as a solution for some things we can't do without, namely steel and cement. And yet, it's expensive to capture the CO2 for steel and cement, as opposed to the relatively clean ethanol that can be captured and used to carbonate a keg of beer, for example. So it's natural that companies, because they aren't really concerned with solving hard problems, they aren't really concerned about the environment, they're concerned with making money. They would say, aha, $85 a ton. I could work hard to earn that, cleaning up a steel plant, or I could just roll with some ethanol plants, collect that easy CO2 and stuff it in the ground. And that's exactly what's happening. It's become an investor's gold rush. It shouldn't be lost on you that this is a Canadian company coming down into the United States, a Canadian company whose largest investor is the Canadian pension system. These folks aren't players in any particular thing except money. So, I mean, to me, it's all just a scheme to take advantage of these tax credits. And, you know, I mean, we need to solve CO2 problems, in my opinion. We need better alternatives, but I don't think we need these pipelines here and now. The money and the rush to get in before the safety regulations are in place tell me enough about this story to know that I'm not going to support these pipelines in any way, shape, or form.
Another technical question. What would happen if a rupture happened when it's raining? Carbonic acid? Who's the chemist? We have a chemist.
I think the problem is that, yeah, we don't really know. The rupture is going to concentrate higher amounts of CO2 at ground level and displace oxygen. So could it be a slightly acidic rain? I mean, there's definitely a possibility. But I think the bigger problem is that we just don't have any modeling that's sophisticated enough to bring in these hundreds upon hundreds of factors and figure out every scenario. But we know that the ruptures themselves are dangerous. Could rain dampen their effect? Maybe, but we can't count on it to be raining.
Is that fair?
And I'll just read this. It's something in support of what's already been said, but I don't think we can say it enough. This is not a solution for climate change. It needs to be stressed that this is a big cash in for big oil through the infrastructure bill with regard to social implications and huge costs with no gain to taxpayers. And it is dangerous. I know we have Representative Weaver. I believe you wanted to make a... Did you want to make a comment? Sure. Let me preface this that we, this spring, we tried to get legislation passed to put some real limitations and regulations, protective legislation, because right now we're pretty unprotected by the state of Illinois. So I guess my question to the representative is, are you going to help us get that done?
Yeah, so first of all, that's why my whole point on advocating for this is we got to press the pause button. This is totally unregulated. Look, I represent farmers, I represent a lot of ag. I want to be at the table to negotiate this, but the fact that they're just ramming it down our throat without this being regulated, I just think it's totally the wrong way to go about it. And I appreciate that you all have advocated for safety. I think that that's my number one priority. How frequent are the shutoff valves? What's the test capacity of the pipeline? What do we have in place for emergency service? Minding you that if you have a combustion gas engine, it's not going to be a lot of help for you because it takes oxygen to run, and if there's too much CO2 in there, your vehicle's not even going to work. So if safety is addressed, that's first and foremost. But that doesn't solve the problem, because next, we've got to get our arms around eminent domain. I am not in favor of private companies stealing people's land that they don't want to give up. I think that property rights are a huge right in this country, and we don't just need to let look, I drive on the interstate, I get it, there's times when the government might need to take some land, but a private company, give me a break, I'm totally against that. So let's say number 2, we get eminent domain figured out. We still have this issue of what are we doing to restore the land that we just dredged through. So I mentioned I represent a lot of farmers. They have a lot of field tiling, pipes underneath of the ground that takes water off of the field. So this carbon pipeline comes through, rips up all these farmers' field tiles, bores under county and township roads. That's going to cause a settling effect. So we're just going to let this company come through and destroy our land. We're going to have soil compaction on top of that. So if those 3 things can be addressed, is what I've been advocating for with the Public Utilities Committee as well as the Energy Committee. If we can get all 3 of those taken care of where we feel comfortable about it, I'm open to having the discussion of how can we have another demand on ag products. But if we don't just hit the pause button and make sure that we're doing right by all 3 of those things, I think we're making a grave mistake, because this pipeline's not just going to go away. This is a generational decision, and when you make generational decisions, you take time and study them and make sure that you're making wise decisions. I do not believe that this decision is being made in a wise fashion, and so I would like to hit the pause button, regulate it, study it, make a smart decision, either to do it that addresses those ways, or decide that we don't need to do it. So I appreciate all of you coming out to advocate very much. Thank you.
And your statement about a generational decision is very timely, because if the 2 pipelines, in my opinion, if the 2 pipelines that are proposed are approved, this state will be crisscrossed with pipelines. There's also somebody further down in Logan County talking about the city of Atlanta having pipelines on 3 sides. And they won't be the only community with that. So this isn't just about a pipeline potentially up the south side of Peoria or going under the Mississippi pipeline, 2 pipelines. This is about the future, and what it will do to agriculture, what it will do to the safety, in my opinion, of the residents of Illinois. And if the folks who live further north think that they're safe, they get up the Illinois River, they will just keep going up. So, here's a question about what is the eminent domain process in Illinois? This says it's a committee of 2 appointed people in Iowa, not elected, easily bought. In Illinois, maybe the state law, Tracy, just to talk about what it allows, but I don't know that we can speak to what the actual eminent domain law is.
I mean, I'm more familiar with it from the ICC perspective. Wolf is in front of the ICC speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They want to say that they're going to acquire all the land by voluntary easements, but they're telling the ICC that they may need to use eminent domain. We know that the ICC, in evaluating the Navigator pipeline, has their staff people have been very concerned about Navigator's inability to secure voluntary easements for more than 15 to 20% of their pipeline. I'm not sure what the exact current number is, and has said that that's a reason why the pipeline shouldn't be approved at all, because of the overwhelming lack of landowner interest in the project. Once an eminent domain situation kicks in, then, I mean, I believe you're offered fair market value of your property and you're basically forced to go along with it. But I'm not an attorney, and I haven't really specialized in what, exactly the steps would happen once they actually got an eminent domain order from the ICC and had the ability to use that to secure easements or to secure pore space for sequestering the CO2.
Debra'e?
I'm listening to the discussion. I just want to share with you, going to speak in Iowa and having a large PHMSA presence there, there were also many Iowa farmers standing against the pipeline. And I told them, I said, I'm leaving this meeting and I'm going back to Peoria to fight. Because I see, when I learn more about the length of the pipeline, again, Peoria is the largest city on the pipeline. I said, please stand against it. And if Peoria says no, it is going to embolden them to continue to stand against it, you guys. People are watching this city. People are watching Central Illinois to find out how we feel about the pipeline, if we're going to stand together against it. And so I'm again asking, start the process by telling someone about the pipeline. Tell them to Google it. Tell them to get educated for themselves so that when decisions start being made by county board officials, our city council members, our city leadership, they will be clear on what we as citizens want. This is an issue where we need to go back to really being involved as voters and speaking up for ourselves.
And this is just a last comment. As an occupational therapist who worked for decades in neurology, as the two gentlemen spoke of 4 minutes for a heart attack and 10 minutes for clinical death, or lack of oxygen, working with people who did not die but suffered often some permanent brain damage, it is very important to remember these individuals need for assistance indefinitely. And then we pause. How do you know after taking time to study there might be other scientific solutions other than CO2? We need to go towards environmental improvements.
Yes.
I love that ending. So I want to thank our panelists very much, and I know they'll be around for a little bit. We have another session that starts at 3. But thank you all so much, and please, if you can and are thinking it's a good idea, Citizens Against Predatory Pipelines need your financial support and also your brain power and physical action. So thank you again.